Welcome to the DragonLance Saga Gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons episode. This is the fourth in the series. It is Braca, Holmeswealth the fifth, and my name is Adam. Dragonlance came out of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, so I thought it would be fun to read the core rules aloud and discuss them with the live audience. Or maybe with myself, because it's still really early on a Saturday. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, ring the bell, and you can support this channel by becoming a patron on Patreon, a member of the YouTube channel, and you can pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate link. All links are in the description below. And we are starting today with alignment of all the exciting topics. Now, if you know anything about first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dragonlance alignment mechanics, you know it can be touchy at best. And so I think it's interesting the way that alignment is presented in the game and then the way alignment is handled in Dragonlance Adventures sourcebook, because they are a bit different. So let's get into it. Alignment. After generating the abilities of your character, selecting his or her race, and deciding upon a class, it is necessary to determine the alignment of the character. It is possible that the selection of the class your character will profess has predetermined alignment. A druid is neutral, a paladin is lawful good, a thief can be neutral or evil, an assassin is always evil. Yet, except for druids and paladins, such restrictions leave latitude. The thief can be lawful evil, chaotic neutral, neutral, or even neutral good, and the assassin has nearly as many choices. The alignments possible for characters are described below. Chaotic evil. The major precepts of this alignment are freedom, randomness, and woe. Laws and order, kindness, and good deeds are disdained. Life has no value. By promoting chaos and evil, those of this alignment hope to bring themselves to positions of power, glory, and prestige in a system ruled by individual caprice and their other whims. Chaotic good. While creatures of this alignment view freedom and the randomness of action as ultimate truths, they likewise place value on life and the welfare of each individual. Respect for individualism is also great. By promoting the gods of chaotic good, characters of this alignment seek to spread their values throughout the world. Chaotic neutral. Above respect for life and good, or disregard for life and promotion of evil, the chaotic neutral places randomness and disorder. Good and evil are complementary balance arms. Neither are preferred, nor must either prevail, for ultimate chaos would then suffer. Lawful evil. Creatures of this alignment are great respecters of laws and strict order, but life, beauty, truth, freedom, and the like are held as valueless, or at least scorned. By adhering to stringent discipline, those of lawful evil alignment hope to impose their yoke upon the world. Lawful good. While as strict in their prosecution of law and order, characters of lawful good alignment follow these precepts to improve the common weal. Certain freedoms must, of course, be sacrificed in order to bring order, but truth is of highest value, and life and beauty of great importance. The benefits of the society are to be brought by all. Lawful neutral. Those of this alignment view regulation as all-important, taking a middle road betwixt evil and good. This is because the ultimate harmony of the world and the whole of the universe is considered by lawful neutral creatures to have its sole hope rest upon law and order. Evil or good are immaterial besides the determined purpose of bringing all to predictability and regulation. Neutral evil. The neutral evil creatures views law and chaos as unnecessary consideration, for pure evil is all in all. Either might be used, but both are disdained as foolish clutter, useless, and eventually bringing maximum evilness to the world. Neutral good. Unlike those directly opposite them, neutral evil in alignment, creatures of neutral good believe that there must be some regulation in combination with freedoms if the best is to be brought to the world. The most beneficial conditions for living things in general and intelligent creatures in particular. True neutral. The true neutral looks upon all other alignments as facets of the system of things. Thus, each aspect, evil and good, chaos and law, of things must be retained in balance to maintain their status quo. For things as they are cannot be improved upon except temporarily, and even then, but superficially. Nature will prevail and keep things as they were meant to be, provided the wheel surrounding the hub of nature does not become unbalanced due to the work of unnatural forces, such as human and other intelligent creatures interfering with what is meant to be. Naturally, there are various variations and shades of tendencies within each alignment. The descriptions are generalized only. A character can be basically good in its true neutrality or tend towards evil. It is probable that your campaign referee will keep a graph of the drift of your character on the alignment chart. This is affected by the actions and desires of your character during the course of each adventure and will be reflected in the graph. You may find that these actions are such as to cause the declared alignment to be shifted towards or actually to some other. Okay, quick note. I did not know that that was part of just the basic core Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game. I really thought that was like a Dragonlance specific eventuality, but wow. All right, the mechanic is here. Learn something new every day. Changing alignment. While involuntary change of alignment is quite possible, it is very difficult for a character to voluntarily switch from one to another, except within the limited areas. Evil alignments can be varied along the like axis. The neutral character can adopt for some more specific alignment. Your referee will probably require certain stringent sacrifices and appropriate acts, possibly a quest as well, for any other voluntary alignment change. In fact, even axial change within evil or good, or radial movement from neutrality, may require strong proofs of various sorts. Further voluntary change will be even more difficult. Changing back to a forsaken alignment is next to impossible on a voluntary basis. Even involuntary drift will bring the necessity of great penance. And that is all there is to alignment. So what do you guys think? What is your alignment? Let me know in chat if you care to. And now, the next section. Character hit points. Each character has a varying number of hit points, just as monsters do. These hit points represent how much damage, actual or potential, the character can withstand before being killed. A certain amount of these hit points represent the actual physical punishment which can be sustained. The remainder, a significant portion of hit points at higher levels, stands for skill, luck, and/or magical factors. A typical man-at-arms can take about 5 hit points of damage before being killed. Let us suppose that a 10th level fighter has 55 hit points, plus a bonus of 30 hit points for his constitution for a total of 85 hit points. This is the equivalent of about 18 hit dice for creatures, about what it would take to kill 4 huge war horses. It is ridiculous to assume that even a fantastic fighter can take that much punishment. The same holds true for a lesser extent for clerics, thieves, and the other classes. Thus, the majority of hit points are symbolic of combat skill, luck bestowed by supernatural powers, and magical forces. Hit points are determined by hit dice. At first level, a character has but 1 hit die. Exception, rangers and monks begin with 2 hit die each. At each successive level, another hit die is gained, i.e., the die is rolled to determine how many additional hit points the character gets. Hit points can be magically restored by healing potions, cure wounds spells, rings of regeneration, or even by wish spells. However, a character's hit points can never exceed the total initially scored by hit dice, constitution bonus or penalty, and magical devices. For example, if a character has 26 hit points at the beginning of an adventure, he or she cannot drink a potion or be enchanted to above that number, 26 in this case. As an example, let us assume that the character with 26 hit points mentioned above is engaging in an adventure. Early in the course of exploring the dungeon, he or she falls to a 10-foot deep pit, taking one 6-sided die, 1d6 of damage, 4 hit points of damage, so the character drops to 22 hit points. Next, he or she takes 15 hit points of damage in combat, so the character drops to 7 hit points. A cleric in the party uses a Cure Serious Wounds spell on this character, and this restores 10, for example, depending upon the die roll, of his or her lost hit points. So the character has a total of 17. Later activities reduce the character to 3 hit points, but the party uses a wish spell to restore all members to full hit points, so at that time, the character goes up to 26 once more. Rest also restores hit points, for it gives the body a chance to heal itself and regain the stamina of force, which adds the skill, luck, and magical hit points. Your character's class will determine which sort of die you will roll to determine hit points. In some campaigns, the referee will keep this total secret, informing players only that they feel strong, fatigued, or very weak, thus indicating warning hit points. In other campaigns, the Dungeon Master will have players record their character's hit points and keep track of all changes. Both methods are acceptable, and it is up to your DM as to which will be used in the campaign you participate in. All right, so that's it with the hit point section. Hey, Solid Crumby, haha. How you doing? Nice name. Thanks for joining live. I think I never have ever even considered using the alternate method of just saying that, the DM keeping track of the player's hit points and saying that you feel fatigued, strong, or very weak. That seems terrible, like a terrible option, because then you don't really know how much you want to gamble with engaging in another fight or taking a dangerous action. What do you guys think? Have you ever played that version of hit points where it's just the DM giving you vague references to how many hit points you have? I'm not sure I like that, to be honest. It's kind of strange. All right. The next section, and this is just not big enough, so I gotta stretch this thing out. Establishing the character. By determining abilities, race, class, alignment, and hit points, you have created your character. Next, you must name him or her and possibly give some family background, and name a next of kin as heir to the possessions of the character if he or she should meet an untimely death, to personify the character. Having done all that, the Dungeon Master will introduce your character to the campaign setting. In all likelihood, whether the locale is a village, town, or city, your character will have to acquaint himself or herself with the territory. The first step will often be getting into the place, i.e. a gate guard demanding to know what business you have in the town or city. Thereafter, it will be necessary to locate a safe and reasonably priced place in which to lodge, typically an inn of some sort, but perhaps a rented cot, a loft, or even chambers at a hostel. Since the location selected will have to serve as a base and depot, it must be relatively safe from intrusion and burglary. Once a headquarters has been found, your character can set about learning the lay of the land and attempt to find the trade establishments needed to supply the desired equipment for adventuring. Perhaps it will be necessary to locate where other player characters reside in order to engage in joint expeditions. In any event, your character created, personified, and established will be ready to adventure once equipment is purchased and relations with other player characters are settled. If player characters are not immediately available, or if they are not cooperative, it is advised that men-at-arms be hired. Hirelings of this sort, as well as henchmen, are detailed in the sections entitled Hirelings and Henchmen. I've never done it in that order. I've never played where you started the game and then you rolled your character and then decided where you're going to be, where your home base would be, like ever. I've never even thought about that. I always assumed that there was an existing one that's somehow in the narrative that we just haven't really gotten around to yet. I don't know. What about you guys? All right, the next section here. Character languages. All humans, as well as those semi-humans and non-humans in close contact with people, speak the common tongue. the language is spoken by all states in the central campaign area, but your referee may well have areas in which the common tongue is different from that which your character speaks. In addition to the common tongue, all intelligent creatures able to converse in speech use special languages, particular to their alignment. Those alignment languages are chaotic evil, chaotic good, chaotic neutral, lawful evil, lawful good, lawful neutral, neutral evil, neutral good, and neutrality. The alignment of your character will dictate which language he or she speaks, for only one alignment dialect can be used by a character. See character classes, the assassin. If a character changes alignment, the previously known language is no longer able to be spoken by him or her. In addition to the above, druids have their own special tongue, and thieves have their secret speech, the thieves' cant. Therefore, a character will speak at least 2 languages, common and alignment. He or she might also be able to converse in the special patois of druids or thieves. Semi-human and non-human characters are able to speak racial tongues as well. See character races. In most campaigns, it is likely that open alignment speech will be frowned upon as a serious breach of social etiquette. A character can learn additional languages. Even the rather slow 80 IQ can learn 1 additional language. However, his vocabulary, usage, and ability to translate must perforce be limited. The very bright can learn 5, 6, or even 7. For details on the number of tongues which can be learned, see character abilities, intelligence. Here is how a new language is learned. The character must find a person, human, semi-human, or non-human, or talking creature, who speaks the language which is to be learned. The character must then be in close proximity to his or her instructor for up to 1 year, and prior to that period, the language must be learned 1 month early for each point of intelligence above 12. Thus, a character with 13 intelligence learns the new language in 11 months. 14 intelligence learns in 10 months, all the way to 18 intelligence, which requires but 6 months to learn. Only 1 new language can be studied at any given time. Which languages are knowable in a campaign is strictly up to the DM who runs it. The following list gives some languages typically used: Dwarvish, Elvish, Goblin, Halfling, Hobgoblin, Kobold, Lizardman, Orcish, Ogreish. All of the above may not normally be available due to campaign circumstances, and languages not listed might be common. Consult your dungeon master. Note that if, for example, you capture a centaur or talking dragon of some sort, it is possible to learn the appropriate creature tongue. Have you guys dealt with language, like alignment languages? I'm really curious how other people wrap their heads around this. I think typically we've used racial languages in the different campaigns I've run, but most of the playing characters still communicated with each other and understood general tone of what was going to be said based on body language and, just sort of external stimuli factors. Did you ever deal with the mechanic of being around another, species or type character in order, NPC, in order to learn their language? And that's a lot of, you can sort of do that in a sum up type session, like after a campaign or between campaigns or before. But during a campaign, that seems a little strange. I don't know, it could be a good role-playing experience too, What do you guys think? Money. Money, money, money. Starting money. Your character is unusual, exceptional as compared to the norm. This applies to abilities and funds as well. Thus, he or she will have a large supply of coins with which to purchase equipment and supplies to begin adventuring. The possible number of gold pieces with which all player begins with depends on the character class. Cleric, 30 to 180 gold pieces, 3d6. Fighter, 50 to 200 gold pieces, 5d4. Magic user, 20 to 80 gold pieces, 2d4. Thief, 20 to 120 gold pieces, 2d6. Monk, 5 to 20 gold pieces, 5d4. To determine the number of gold pieces your character has at the start, simply roll the appropriate dice and total the sum, adding a decimal place if necessary. Most of these funds will quickly be spent on the costs of staying in the adventuring area and acquiring the equipment which will be used for adventuring. See basic equipment and supplies cost tables hereafter. The monetary system. The basic unit of exchange is the gold piece, GP, hereafter. There are coins of lesser and greater value, and these are shown on the table below. It is also common to use gems of various sorts and values as coins. 10 copper pieces, CP, equal 1 silver piece. 20 silver pieces, SP, equal 1 gold piece. 2 electrum pieces, EP, equal 1 gold piece. 1 platinum piece, PP, equals 5 GP, gold piece. Thus, 200 copper pieces equal 20 silver pieces equal 2 electrum pieces equal 1 gold piece equal 1/5 of a platinum piece. It is assumed that the size and weight of each coin is relatively equal to each other coin regardless of type. Your character will most probably be adventuring in an area where money is plentiful. Think of the situation as similar to Alaskan boom towns during the gold rush days, when eggs sold for $1 each and mining tools sold for $20, $50, and $100 or more. Costs in the adventuring area are distorted because of the law of supply and demand. The supply of coin is high, while supplies of equipment for adventurers are in great demand. Money changing, banks, loans, and jewelers. Large sums of lower value coins can be changed to a smaller number of larger value coins and vice versa at a relatively small cost, typically 3% of the transaction. This is done at the money changers. The money changer will also score as a banker, keeping funds and giving a marker to vouch for the amount. Note that bankers will not usually give any interest. Bankers will give loans according to the reliability, renown, status, and material possessions of the individual. An unknown and low-level character is unlikely to get a loan without giving security for the value of the amount borrowed. Furthermore, the interest rate will be high, typically 10% per month or even 5% per week. A well-known and propertied character can typically get large loans at relatively low interest, 1% per week or thereabouts. Jewelers and gem merchants will buy and sell jewelry and gems. The buying price will usually be 20% under the actual value of the piece or stone. Characters should carefully shop and, whenever possible, to determine which establishment offers the best value. All right. I do remember haggling a lot in my game sessions. I don't know if that's from me as the player or just the DM wanting to, try to get every coin out of the player's pouch or whatever, but it was a pain at times, I gotta tell you. Especially if, you're forced to roll sort of resolution dice and you end up rolling low. And you're just like, oh man, but I could argue with this person. Okay. Gotta sip my coffee. It's still early. Equipping the character. Careful selection of equipment and supplies for characters is very important. Often there will not be sufficient funds to purchase everything desired, so intelligent choices will have to be made. Also, the choice of equipment should always be done with respect to encumbrance. See movement restrictions. In many campaigns, it is necessary for a character to shop in a number of places in order to obtain everything they desire. A few games will have a trader's establishment in which everything or nearly everything can be found, but the average cost will be higher because these traders are middlemen. As in most dealings, the buyer should always beware. Things may be as they appear, or they might be otherwise. A list of goods typically desired by characters follows. All right, our first table we're looking at today. So this is base equipment and supply costs. Armor seems to be pretty expensive, understandably. Do you guys track arrows too? This is something that I always thought was kind of fun and added a bit of realism, is that we would literally track every arrow, and then we would actually have a percentile dice percentage chance of recovering the arrow after battle. It was really low, but there was always a chance that it would still be usable. And then I guess that depended on whether or not you know, it sunk in the bad guy or not, or in like a wall. But yeah. Oh, here's another interesting question. Like ranseur, I don't even have a clue what that is. Does everyone understand what all of these are, or did you have to have some sort of medieval fantasy armory book in order to understand what a fouchard is? You know what I mean? Because let's be honest, this came out, there was no internet. You couldn't just search the word. You had to like use a library or an encyclopedia. Like, do you guys remember? There were actual encyclopedia salesmen. They would go door to door and they would sell you encyclopedias. I mean, otherwise, how would you get it? You'd have to go to a library. And if you know, were a rural um, individual, you would not normally have access to a library. Those things that you don't really think about nowadays, but really affected life back in the day. Kind of interesting, I thought. All right. Oh, there's more. Sorry, that was premature. Livestock. We're going to do a lot of tables here because this, we're getting into the meat and potatoes, as it were, part of the book. Pint of ale. A single incense stick. I think that's kind of funny. All right. Let's get to armor. Armor. Armor, along with the use of a shield, is the basis for determination of how easily a character can be struck by an opponent's weapon. Other factors modify this, of course. Dexterity and magical effects are the two principal modifiers. Do not confuse armor, which is worn, with the armor class, AC rating of a monster. Although a creature might be given a very high armor class because of its exceptionally thick hide, armor plating, chitinous exoskeleton, or the like, other factors are considered in such ratings. For example, the size of the creature, its speed, its agility, and perhaps its supernatural, extra-dimensional, or multi-planed existence aspects are considered in the armor class of all human-type or non-human type monsters. Therefore, a monster with an armor class of 2 will not be carrying a shield. Armor types are given on the table below. Note that the inclusion of a shield raises armor class AC by a factor of 1, 5%, but that assumes attack from the front, where the character can interpose it between himself and a blow. A small shield can be counted against only 1 attack per melee round. A normal-sized shield can effectively be counted against 2 attacks per melee round. A large shield is counted against up to 3 attacks per melee round. Attacks from the right flank and rear always negate the advantage of a shield. The cost of armor and shield varies. Generally speaking, the better the protection, the greater the expense. Note, magic armor negates weight, so that movement does not consider any encumbrance from magical items. There are otherwise various types of magical armor. Alright, let's look at some armor class here. I always tried to go with the greatest, you know, like plate mail and shield, but I never, ever, unless it was like a surprise or sneak attack, even not once remember removing the bonus of a shield, and certainly not, as they're suggesting here, with the amount of attacks per melee round that the shield could negate or count against. Did you guys do that? I guess it depends on how rules lawyery you want to be during your game session. So here, for each +1 of magical armor or magical shield, a decrease in armor class of 1 is given. For example, a non-armored character with a +1 shield is armor class 8, a +2 shield, armor class 7, etc. The same is true with regard to pluses of magical armor of any type. A +1 converts to a 5% probability, thus +2 equals a 10% likelihood of being hit. Magical plate mail +3 and magical shield +5 are equal to armor class -6, or can be treated as AC2 with a subtraction of 8 from attackers' 2-hit die rolls. Interesting. Let's get on to weapons. The choice of weapon used by your character might be circumscribed by the class of your character, but selection is otherwise a matter of your preference, based on various factors presented hereafter. Of course, the initial cost of the weapon might affect your selection at the beginning. Beyond this consideration, there are factors of size and weight. The damage inflicted by the weapon is important, as is the amount of space required to wield it. These details are given hereafter. Weapon proficiency. At the start, your character will be able to employ but a limited number of weapons. The number is determined by class. When the character moves up in levels of experience to the next higher combat melee table, he or she is assumed to have acquired proficiency in additional weapon. The new weapon is of his or her choice. Note that proficiency with a normal weapon is subsumed in using a magical weapon of the same type. If proficiency with any given weapon is not held by the character, it is used as a penalty, as shown on the table which follows. So let's take a look at this table. Weapon proficiency table. And this shows the class of character, initial number of weapons, the non-proficiency penalty of using the weapon, and added proficiency in weapons per level. Which is kind of nice. Let's see, the monk, 1 every 2, but then he doesn't even use weapons, which is weird. I guess it's the right hand and the left hand. Notes regarding weapon proficiency table. Initial number of weapons shows the number which the character may select to be proficient with, i.e. a cleric would select a flail and staff, club and mace, or any combination of 2 permitted weapons. Non-proficiency penalty indicates the subtraction from the character's 2-hit dice, which applies to attacks by the character using such a weapon in missile or melee combat. See combat. Added proficiency in weapons gives the number of additional weapons the character can use with proficiency upon attaining the indicated number of levels, above the first. Thus, at first level, a cleric can use 2 weapons with proficiency. At 5th level, the cleric selects another for a total of 3. At 9th level, the total is 4. At 13th, 5, etc. Alright, weapons and damage by weapon type. Nice. Again, the majority of these types of weapons, I have no idea what they are. Like, I would genuinely have to look it up. I mean, that's a big list. Interesting. All right. Oh, and I thought we were done. No. So weapon types, general data, and to hit adjustments. So based on the armor class adjustment, that's crazy. That's a lot of information to keep track of if you are weapons. You're just carrying around a whole bunch of different types of weapons. Pretty math heavy when you get down to it. Not that that's a bad thing. Oh boy. All right, so hurled weapons and missiles. The firing rate, the range, and the armor class adjustment. Any weapon strikes at +2 against an opponent's back, or similarly unseen. Against stunned, prone, and motionless opponents, any weapon strikes at +4. That's an important note to take, as that's going to help you hit people, and it seems kind of buried between the weapons tables here. I feel like that should be in a call-out box or something. Nice. Rate of fire is based on the turn for tabletop miniatures or the melee round. Ranges are S equals short, M equals medium, L equals long. Armor class adjustment is based on the weapon or missile being discharged at short range. Adjust by -2 at all medium ranges, -5 at all long ranges. That makes sense. All right, what's next here? Oh yeah, let's get into this. Hirelings. At any time, a character may attempt to hire various different sorts of workers, servants, or guards. The success of such hiring is entirely dependent upon availability of the type desired, wage and bonus offers, and to some extent the character's charisma. Typical hirelings are alchemist, armorer, bearer, blacksmith, crossbowman, engineer, link boy, I don't even know what that means, man-at-arms, steward, teamster, valet. Your character will have to locate the whereabouts of whatever type of hireling he or she desires to take into service, and it will be up to your character to determine wages and salaries in the area he or she is in. Employment can be by the hour, day, week, month, or year, according to the desires of the character and agreeability of the persons to be hired. Your referee will handle all such matters as they occur. Note that the number of hirelings is in no way limited by charisma, and hirelings differ considerably from henchmen, who are discussed immediately hereafter. The loyalty of hirelings is quite similar to that of henchmen, though, and the discussion of the loyalty of henchmen can be applied to hirelings of all sorts. See henchmen hereafter. Here's another note I kind of want to call out, because I've never used hirelings either. Whenever we needed we needed assistance or a helping hand, we just made another character. And so we were, sometimes you'd run around with 2 characters, or you ran around with 3 characters, and you would just keep them as sort of a pool in which you can pull from and share experience with during those adventures. Did you guys use hirelings? All right, what's next here? Henchmen. Henchmen. As discussed in the preceding section regarding character abilities, charisma has a great effect on the number of henchmen a character is able to attract. A henchman is a more or less devoted follower of a character. In returning for the use of his or her abilities and talents, the henchman receives support, lodging, and a share of his or her master's or mistress's earnings, in the form of stipends or as a share of treasure taken. Henchmen are always of a character race and character class, but are never player characters. The alignment of a henchman should be compatible with that of the player character whom he or she serves. Difference in alignment will certainly affect the loyalty of all henchmen if alignment is radically different. It will usually be necessary for your character to visit various inns and drinking establishments in search of henchmen. It is also possible that a number of notices will have to be posted, perhaps in conjunction with the employment of a crier to announce the employment offered. The cost of such is often high, in rounds of drinks, food, tips, gratuities, bribes, fees, and so forth. These costs are in addition to actual sums paid to the henchmen eventually employed. Locating non-human characters such as dwarves, elves, and the like may be even more protracted, difficult, and costly than the hiring of human and semi-human henchmen. This depends on campaign circumstances, such as whether or not non-humans are common in the area and whether or not non-humans tend to associate with humans and frequent the inns and taverns. Once a henchman is brought to your character's service, it will be necessary to pay a wage, plus support and upkeep. Your referee will inform you as to such costs. When a henchman accompanies your character on adventures, he or she may be given a portion of treasure, both money and magic, just as a player character would. However, the share can be lesser, for all of the henchman's expenses are paid for by his or her master or mistress. Naturally, it is a good idea to give a henchman as much treasure as possible, for in that way the henchman gains experience points. Experience points awarded to henchmen is usually much less than that which would be given to a player character. This is because the henchmen are acting under the direction of their master or mistress. So you should expect that your character's henchmen will get about 50% of the experience points, which is their share of the slaying of opponents and garnered treasure actual totals. Possibly even less if your character bore the brunt of the action and closely directed the henchmen. The loyalty of the henchman is based on many factors. Charisma of the player character is very important. Remuneration, support, upkeep, wages, bonuses, and sharing of treasure plays a big part also. The involvement of henchmen in adventuring is important, as are the activities of the character and what he or she requires of the henchman during the course of adventuring. For example, assuming the character has above average charisma, he or she could be somewhat less than generous in remuneration and still have henchmen with about average loyalty. If remuneration of or activity were above the minimum required, loyalty would be correspondingly higher. If both remuneration and activity were exceptional, the loyalty base of henchmen would be likewise exceptional. Actions to protect the lives and welfare of henchmen or saving the life or resurrecting henchmen give loyalty above average. Disloyalty will come into play in combat and other stress situations. Disloyal henchmen will betray or desert their master or mistress. See morale. God, this just makes me want to play this game so badly. Time. Time in the campaign is very important. Your referee will keep strict account of the time consumed by various characters, for it is likely to separate them, since not all participants are likely to play at the same actual time. Time costs characters money in support, upkeep, and wage payments. It takes time to adventure, to heal wounds, to memorize spells, to learn languages, to build strongholds, to create magic items. A very long time in the last given case. In adventuring below ground, a turn in the dungeon lasts 10 minutes. See also movement. In combat, the turn is further divided into 10 melee rounds, or simply rounds. Rounds are subdivided into 10 segments for purposes of determining initiative and order of attacks. Thus, a turn is 10 minutes, a round 1 minute, and a segment 6 seconds. Outdoor time is measured in days, usually subdivided into daylight movement and night rest periods. Thus, while actual time playing is about the same for a dungeon adventure, the game time spent is much greater in the case of outdoor adventures. Distance. For purposes of the game, distances are basically 1/3 with respect to spell and missile range from outdoors to indoors underground situations. Thus, most ranges are shown as inches by means of the symbol, inches symbol, i.e. 1 inch, etc. Outdoors, 1 inch equals 10 yards. Indoors, 1 inch equals 10 feet. Such a ratio is justifiable to some extent, regardless of game considerations. Actual effective range of an arrow shot from a longbow is around 210 yards maximum, in clear light and open terrain. Underground, with little light and low ceilings overhead, a bow shot of 210 feet is about maximum. Archery implies arcing arrows. Slings are in this category, as are hurled darts and javelins, as all arcing in flight to achieve distance. Crossbows are a notable exception, but under the visibility conditions of a dungeon setting, a yards to feet conversion is not unreasonable. Magic and spells are most certainly devices of the game. In order to make them fit the constrictions of the underground labyrinth, a 1-for-3 reduction is necessary. It would be folly, after all, to try to have such effective attack modes if feet were not converted to yards outdoors, where visibility, movement, and conventional weapon attack ranges are based on actual fact. See movement. Distance scale and areas of effect for spells and missiles are designed to fit the game. The tripling of range outdoors is reasonable, as it allows for recreation of actual ranges for hurled javelins, arrows fired from longbows, or whatever. In order to keep magic spells on a par, their range is also tripled. It is imperative that outdoor scale be used for range only, never for spell area of effect, which is kept at 1 inch equals 10 feet. Unless a figure, this is all in caps, unless a figure ratio of 1 to 10 or 1 to 20, 1 casting equals 10 or 20 actual creatures or things in most cases, is used, and constructions such as buildings, castles, walls, etc. are scaled to figures rather than to ground scale. Note that the foregoing assumes that a ground scale of 1 inch to 10 yards is used. Movement scale is kept as flexible as possible in order to deal with the multitude of applications it has, i.e. dungeon movement, exploring and otherwise, city travel, treks through the outdoors, and combat situations arising during the course of any such movements. Your referee will have information which will enable him or her to adjust the movement rate to the applicable timescale for any situation. Monster, the term. It is necessary to stress that the usage of the term monster is generic for any creature encountered during the course of adventuring. A monster can be exactly what the name implies, or it can be a relatively harmless animal, a friendly, intelligent beast, a crazed human, a band of dwarves, a thief, virtually anything or anyone potentially threatening or hostile. When your referee indicates your character has encountered a monster, that simply indicates a confrontation between your character and some type of creature is about to take place. The results of such a meeting will depend on many factors, including the nature of the monster and your character's actions. All monsters are not bad. I actually really appreciate that specification. I played in a campaign. It was a 3.5 edition campaign that was very strict with the idea that there was consequences to just going around and murdering things. There were laws in the land, and so you couldn't just, even as an adventuring character, walk around and murder someone, even if they attacked you first, and not expect legal repercussion from that action. And so you had to either hide that you murdered, it was a very Wild West type tone. You get bounties out on you. You had to run from the law if you just went around murdering people because you were an outlaw. And it's just an interesting way of approaching it. And I always had a problem trying to stress to the players when I was a dungeon master that not all encounters are going to be murderers. You're not always going to have to kill whatever I put in front of you. Sometimes you're just going to wile and guile them or you trick them, or maybe they're not hostile at all, but you don't know because they're always in this mind frame of, if there's a monster in front of me, I must kill it. Is that a problem that you guys ran into as well? All right, next up here. Character spells. The casting of spells, clerical and magical, is a very important aspect of play. Most spells have a verbal component, and so must be uttered. Most spells also have a somatic movement of the caster's body, such as gesturing, component. Some spells have a third component, that of material. Clerical spells, including the druidic, are bestowed by the gods, so that the cleric needs but pray for a few hours, and the desired verbal and somatic spell components will be placed properly in his or her mind. First, second, third, and even fourth level spells are granted to the cleric through meditation and devout prayer. This spell giving is accomplished by the lesser servants of the cleric's deity. Fifth, sixth, and seventh level spells can be given to cleric only by the cleric's deity directly, not through some intermediary source. Note that the cleric might well be judged by his or her deity at such times, as the cleric must supplicate the deity for the granting of these spells. While the deity may grant such spells fully willingly, a deed or sacrifice, atonement, or abasement may be required. The deity may also ignore a specific spell request and give the cleric some other spell or none at all. Your dungeon master will handle this considering a cleric's alignment and faithfulness to it and his or her deity. Note that some cleric spells, and all druid spells, also require a material ingredients in order for the desired effect to take place. Such components must be supplied by the cleric or druid, as material is not bestowed. Magical spells, those of the magic user and illusionist, are not bestowed by any supernatural force. Rather, the magic user or illusionist must memorize each spell, verbal and somatic components, and supply himself or herself with any required materials as well. Such memorization requires a character to consult his or her spellbooks in order to impress the potent, mystical spell formula upon the mind. Additional items for the material component must then be acquired, if necessary. Spells of any sort must therefore be selected prior to setting out on an adventure, for memorization requires considerable time. Your dungeon master will inform you fully as to what state of refreshment the mind of a spellcaster must be in, as well as the time required to memorize a given spell. As a rule of thumb, allow 15 minutes of game time for memorization of one spell level, i.e., a first level spell or half of a second level spell. Such activity requires a mind rested by a good sleep and nourished by the body. Once cast, a spell is totally forgotten, gone. The mystical symbols impressed upon the brain carry power, and speaking the spell discharges this power, draining all memory of the spell used. This does not preclude multiple memorization of the same spell, but it does preclude multiple use of a single spell memorized but once. When a spellcaster shoots his or her spell bolt, so to speak, it is gone. As previously shown in the character classes section, the number of spells usable by a character depend upon class and level. Details of spell casting are given later in the section on combat. The nature and components of the various spells are given in the section immediately after the spell tables. These spell descriptions also contain such information as is pertinent, i.e. range, duration, effect, etc. Your dungeon master may add or delete from a spell's and may even add or delete entire spells. He will inform you of these changes prior to selecting spells or when new spells become available to your character. Material components for spells are assumed to be kept in little pockets stored in the folds and small pockets of the spellcaster's garb. Of course, some materials are too bulky, and in these cases, the materials must be accounted for carefully. Also, some materials are rare, and these must be found and acquired by the spell user. Special cases which pertain to each class of spell-using character type will be noted before each set of spell explanations. And we've got a table here of cleric spells, which is pretty nice. I've never really thought about where the magic comes from for a cleric. I mean, of course, it comes from your god. Like, I assume they just bestow the spell in your mind or something like that. But I like how they specify in the description that, sometimes it's the god's assistants, as it were, or sometimes it's the god themselves, and you may have to placate that god's ego in order to get those spells. I kind of like that idea. That's a very Dragonlance styled approach as well, because gods are very egotistical and emotional in Dragonlance, or at least driven, if nothing else. And then we've got druids, spell table, call lightning. That's awesome. So I am going to be reading each spell. What I'm not going to do is read all of the details of the spell. So I'll give the description of the spell, but not all of the stats. Because honestly, that's going to take it's going to take quite some time to get through. And magic users, my goodness. Tensor's Floating Disc is awesome. That's a great spell. Totally underused in most of the campaigns I've ever played. But when used creatively, some of these spells are just fantastic. That's the other thing. Do you guys have... did you ever track the material components? I always loved that part of the magic users is forcing them to actually track the different components. It could, some of them are common, so it's not a big deal, but it just adds an extra dimension of necessity to the magic user, and it made it feel a little bit more Raistlin-like to me, where, he was always very specific about what was required, and if he ran across a component, he would collect them. When in Dragons of the Dwarven Depths, he was studying fungus and stuff, which ended up, helping him later on. It's really good stuff. Oh yeah, look at this. Oh, I love these images. That's so great. His familiar is just like perching his hand. Oh, that's awesome. Sorry, lost my window here. Lots of spells. My goodness. All right, we're at an hour here almost. Should I start reading the spells? Let me get through the definition of the explanation, and then maybe I'll stop there. And we'll just knock out all the spells in the next episode. Spell explanations. Each spell is presented here in exactly the same format. The spell is first identified by name and type of magic it involves. Thereafter, its level, range, distance it can be cast, duration, area of effect, components, casting time, and saving throw are shown. Finally, an explanation of the spell and a description of its effects are given in some detail. Range is shown in inches, see distance, or as touch, which indicates the caster must physically contact the recipient. Contact the recipient of the spell with his or her hand. I've got to change this really quick. Duration is given as a number of turns, rounds, or simply instantaneous, as in the case of a lightning bolt which lasts only a brief moment. See time. Area of effect shows how large an area the spell covers or how many persons or creatures it will affect. Components, as previously mentioned, are verbal V, semantic S, and or material M. This indicates which are part of the spell. Casting time shows the number of melee rounds or segments of a melee round required to cast the spell. Remember that there are 10 segments to a melee round, 10 melee rounds to a turn. Some spells require additional time in preparation. Saving throw tells whether a saving throw is possible, and if it is possible, whether success negates the spell or reduces its effect by 50%. And I think that's where we're going to stop. I love these images. Hold on, let me show you this. I think these are just great. Different types of clerics per culture. It's pretty cool stuff. I think that's where we're going to stop for today. Next time, I'm going to try to get through all the spells, but again, there are a ton, so I may not be able to. So that's it for this episode of Gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Do you think alignments are too restrictive? Do you deal with encumbrance rules in your games? And do you fear the instant death rule of AD&D when you reach hit point 0? Feel free to email me at info@dragonlance-saga.com or comment below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, ring the bell, and you can support this channel by becoming a patron on Patreon, a member of this YouTube channel, and you can pick up DragonLance gaming materials using my affiliate link. All links are in the description below. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the DragonLance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with DragonLance Saga, and until next time, Slán Javar.